We're live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a crowdcast to talk about everything you need to know about staking in Moonbeam. I've got lots of things to talk about. We're going to go more in depth than we usually do in a typical video or tutorial. So this is also a great opportunity to get any of your questions answered. So please leave them in the chat or in the Ask a Question box. You can also upvote them or downvote them, I think, in the Ask a Question box. But there's lots to talk about. So I want to make sure that we get to all of your questions. And we're going to start today by kind of talking about what is a collator, what do they do, and we'll also cover how do I choose a collator. So we won't be doing like specific endorsements or anything like that, but more like for the amount that you're staking, the Glimmer or the Moonriver that you have, how do you choose a collator that's right for you? And we can also talk about like how do you get to know the collators and what's a good kind of way to like evaluate which one is a good fit for you. Yes, you can ask questions in the box. That's fine. There's a ask a question box in the bottom right hand corner. It says for right now. So yeah, the outline of the session for today, we'll talk about collators, how you can pick one. We'll do a demo of staking, and we'll also do a demo of how you can reduce your delegation and also how you can revoke your delegation entirely. So I've got a lot of delegations queued up in Moonbase Alpha to show you kind of the different scenarios, and we'll take a look at all of them. We'll take a look at like what can go wrong, like what happens if your minimum bond amount is kind of below the minimum bond amount for that collator. And we'll also talk about how to optimize and track your delegations, right? So if you join a collator when that collator's minimum bond amount is 50 Glimmer, and then a week passes and then it turns out to be 60 Glimmer when you go back and check again, we'll talk about how you can be better notified of that and track your delegation accordingly. Okay. So quick reminder again, add your questions to Crowdcast. I'll take a break about halfway through to go through the questions, and then also we'll have plenty of time at the end. So collators, their job is to produce blocks for the parachain. So that is, they gather up all the transactions that you submit, and then they organize them into blocks. Now, this is a specific piece of software that is running. And if you've ever run a node in Moonbase Alpha, maybe as an ambassador task or just for your curiosity, it's similar to that, but collators are running on much more powerful hardware, and they also have some specific flags and a slightly different setup. And they also need to have a bond in place and typically have session keys mapped in order to associate a specific collator's bond with the machine that's actually producing blocks. Now, you may hear the term validator, and generally speaking, validator is referring to a node that's running on the relay chain. So validators are on the Polkadot or the Kusama network, and what they're doing is simply validating the state transition logic, and they're taking blocks that the collators have produced, and they're saying, okay, yep, this is a valid block. We're going to include this into the relay chain for finalization. So again, just so there's that distinction there, right? We have collators, which are specific to Moonbeam and Moonriver, and then we have validators, which are a level above. They're on the Kusama and the Polkadot relay chain. Running a node is serious. It's a serious task, right? It's serious business. So uptime is very, very important. The collators are constantly monitoring their node for any issues, and most, if not all of them, have extensive reporting, and they have also typically they have means to be alerted if there are any issues with their node. So they can be woken up in the middle of the night, or whether it's somebody who has to be like on call and kind of ensuring that the node is up and healthy. And we'll talk more about what can kind of happen if a collator's node goes offline or something happens. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So the other job, I mean, collators always have to upgrade their client, right? They have to upgrade their node. So you may have seen on the GitHub the Moonbeam release client version v0.19. That rolls out in stages so that it's releasing to Moonbase Alpha this week, and then Moonriver and Moonbeam later on. But collators always have to upgrade their node and keep it healthy. And sometimes there's plenty of advance notice, and other times it may be kind of like an urgent update that needs to be, their node needs to be upgraded right away. Another thing is backup and resiliency. So they'll have a primary node, but most collators also have a backup node, something to fail over to. Typically, this is at a different data center. If it's a different hosting provider, it's a slightly different setup so that, if the power goes out at a data center, that they can quickly fail over to another node very quickly. And, ideally, you won't notice any disruption at all. And another thing that's coming up, which is really growing, is that a collator has to kind of market themselves, right, and kind of drive community engagement to drive delegations to the node, right? And that can happen through Discord, that can happen through Twitter. Many of the collators are doing an amazing job. They're answering so many questions in Discord. It's so wonderful to have them there answering everybody's questions about how do I stake and these sorts of things. So we're really, really glad to have them. Let's talk about some risks and also some clarifications. So I said, what happens if a collator's node goes offline, right? Could be the example that I gave was the power went out in a data center. If a collator stops producing blocks, that doesn't automatically kick them out of the active set. If a collator has any issues, they'll actually remain in the active set for pretty much as long as their delegator's patience lasts. So after a round has passed, you can see in apps.moonbeam.network, you can see how many blocks that specific collator produced in the last round. And so after a round has passed, and if delegators are checking and they see something that says 0 blocks produced last round, that is a major red flag, and that's an issue, right? And so delegators might say, I'm going to switch to a different collator. And so they might start to pull, their delegations from that collator. And that activity is then what would get a collator removed from the active pool. It's not the act of stopping block production, but actually losing delegations. Now, to elaborate, if your collator stops producing blocks, you would only lose your rewards. So unlike Ethereum, you don't get slashed. If there's a protocol bug or something like that on the client that happens, you're not going to lose your stake. So you can sleep a lot better at night knowing that you're not at risk of getting slashed in Moonbeam. There's no slashing in Moonriver. But if your collator does go offline, you won't earn rewards for that period of time that they're offline. And another thing to mention is that the active pool changes only during round changes. So a round is 6 hours roughly. This is an approximation, about 6 hours in Moonbeam, and then it's about 2 hours in Moonriver. So a collator can only enter or exit the active pool during that time. And again, round length is measured in blocks, and the hour timings are estimates only. So if there's something where you're trying to calculate it exactly down to when is this something exactly going to happen, you should always do that by looking at blocks instead. You want to run a node? Yeah, awesome. I would get started. Umberto says he wants to run a node. I would say go ahead and just start by, we call it a full node. And a full node is not a collator node, but a full node kind of looks at the transactions on the network. And it's a great way to kind of get started and go through the process and that sort. And it actually, if you're just running a full node, it doesn't require any bond or any amount. You only need your bond when you want to run a collator. There's some information on the docs site, which you should check out, and we'll post links at the end for how you can run a node. Another thing let's talk about is that collators cannot take your funds. They never have possession of your funds. And so there's no way that a collator can take your funds. Another thing, collators do not set the commission rate. So there's a protocol-wide 20% commission rate. So if your rewards total 10 glimmer, then 2 glimmer would go to the collator that you delegated with. This is not a number that can be changed by collators, but it can be modified by governance. So it's a parameter that could be tweaked at some point. I also want to mention that Moonbeam is decentralized. So there's no gatekeeper who's guarding the collator set. Anyone who submits the appropriate bond and properly sets up a collator node can become a collator candidate. So this also means that anybody who has the appropriate amount of glimmer, which it is a lot of glimmer and it is a lot of Moonriver for the bond, but anybody who has that can go ahead and set up a node. Now, one thing to consider with that is that one collator entity should not be running more than 4 nodes. So this restriction includes DAOs. It includes like pooled staking organizations. You should avoid staking to any entity that attempts to control more than 4 collator nodes. This is to ensure the sufficient decentralization of the network. Let's see if I should move on to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk kind of about the design of Moonbeam's parachain staking palette. So Moonbeam has its own unique parachain staking design. It's completely different from that of Kusama or Polkadot. And the high-level goal of it is to align the interests of collators and delegators. Now, part of the way that's done is through a large initial bond for collators. And it's a very large number, right? It's 100,000 glimmer plus a 10,000 glimmer mapping to associate the session keys. And then for Moonriver, it's 500 Moonriver is the minimum bond, and then a small amount to get that session key mapped. So it is a significant amount of funds. But remember, this is important because collators are taking on delegations that are worth that have huge value, right? So it wouldn't make sense if we just think about, let's say, okay, a collator minimum bond could be 100 glimmer, and then a collator is going to take on 100,000 glimmer in delegations. It wouldn't make sense, right? So the collators have skin in the game, and their interests are aligned, with that of the delegators who are delegating their stake to them. So we mentioned it's a professional responsibility. It's the equivalent of a job. And collators are rewarded, for their efforts. We mentioned no slashing, and we also mentioned the fixed collator commission. So we covered that. Let's continue right along. So let's talk about the minimum bond amount. This is a question that we get a lot. There's really two numbers to talk about here. One is the protocol minimum bond amount, and that is what's the set by the protocol. What's the minimum amount that you can stake as a delegator, and that's 50 glimmer for Moonbeam, and that's 5 Moonriver for the Moonriver network. Now, that is just kind of like the hard-coded limit. However, for each collator, there may be a higher kind of a dynamic number that's needed in order for you to earn rewards. We'll take a look in Moonbeam network apps, but you'll see on the right-hand side for each collator, there is a minimum bond there, and that's kind of the dynamic number. What that number represents is if you want to immediately start earning staking rewards, right? What is the balance that you would need to stake in order to start earning rewards? So let's dive into that a little bit more, right? So the parachain staking design is such that the top 300 delegators per collator earn rewards. So for each collator, only 300 of the delegators can earn rewards. So the number that's being displayed on apps.moonbeam.network, that's the number that would put you in slot 300. So if it says next to a collator, if it says 61 glimmer is the minimum bond, you can bond that, and you can be earning rewards. Now, somebody could come along and they could come along with 0.001 glimmer more than you, and that would push you to position 301, in which case you would not be earning rewards. So you should strive to be well above the minimum bond amount for the collator that you choose. Remember, this is a number that's it's always changing, and it can decrease too. That's possible. It's probably more likely that it increases, but it could decrease because occasionally the collator set is expanded, and you might have some fellow delegators who leave your specific collator and go somewhere else, and so that minimum bond might come down a little bit. So just to provide an example, right? I have some numbers in mind that I wanted to share. So let's say you have 60 glimmer, and you delegate that to a collator when the minimum bond for that collator is 52 glimmer. So you're well above, you're doing fine. You might come back a week later, and then you see that the minimum bond is actually now 75. And you're like, whoa, this has changed. So you're no longer earning rewards from this collator because you're below that dynamic minimum bond amount. But what can you do, right? Essentially, you have two options. There's a third one, but it's not really a good option. So option one is you can increase your bond. And this is the quick solution, probably the fastest and the most effective. Just increase your bond so that you're above that minimum amount, and preferably, significantly above, so you don't have to worry about it for a while. Option two, you could switch to a different collator. If there's a different collator that has a lower minimum bond amount that might be more appropriate for your stake, you could switch. This might be a more sustainable solution, but you do need to wait for the exit delay period to pass. So when you want to reduce an existing delegation, or if you want to revoke a delegation entirely, there's an exit delay period. That period is 7 days in Moonbeam. It's 2 days in Moonriver. And you can kind of schedule these in advance. So it is possible that, if you anticipated that maybe I might get kind of pushed out, you could schedule a request to revoke from a specific collator. You could schedule that in advance. And then when you see that you are kind of bumped out, maybe there's, you only have to wait a couple of days because you scheduled that request earlier. Now, option three, and again, this is not really, third option is not really a good one, but you could do nothing and you could hope that the minimum bond decreases. Again, not a great option, but we're talking about all the possible options. And it is possible because the collator set does expand periodically. There's a chance that your fellow delegators might move to other collators. Now, you can still bond to a collator if you're not in the top 300 delegators. You won't earn rewards until you're in the top 300. And again, this can happen in two ways. You either increase your stake amount, or other delegators drop out, and then you're in the top 300. Now, if you're delegating to a collator and you see that collator's name in red on Moonbeam apps, something that looks like this, if you see it in red, you can hover over that and you can see exactly the reason for why you're not earning rewards. And we'll jump into a demo in Moonbeam Network apps, but I also wanted to just pause right here and maybe take some questions and have a look at the chat. Okay, please tell me, is it possible that the Moonbeam team will offer to stake Glimmer for a longer period, for example, 3 years, but at the same time, longer rewards will be, okay. No, there's not currently any plans that I'm aware of for this. And the rewards are set, according to the, they're always changing, right? They're dynamic, and it's difficult to calculate like an exact number. There are tools we will look at, including DApp Looker and Web3 Go, but you can kind of run calculations yourself, or you can look at some of these tools which will help you. But the answer is for this case is no. How can we attract more people to stake the Glimmer token? And is it even possible to have a referral program to attract people to choose Collator? There's no like specific referral program or something, but Collators might have they could have their own specific programs that they run. Maybe they have like rewards that are kind of like randomly selected, or they might also have something where if you're delegating to this specific collator for a certain period of time, maybe it's like a thank you for being with me, for a long time. That's certainly possible. Let's see. Okay, regarding one entity not having more than 4 collators, how is this secured to ensure that this will not or cannot take place? The answer is so an entity that has more, that wants to run more than 4 collators, they could attempt to do that, and there's the bond that would stop them from doing that. But if they have the funds, they could attempt to run more than 4. And so it's something where we would hope that the community would not support the collators that are trying to run more than 4. And there's other ways that we can address this, whether that's increasing the collator set size or tweaking some other parameters. There are some other ways that can be addressed. Is there a difference in the collator fee share of rewards if they provide more tokens? This question was asked by Igor. Is there a difference in the collator fee? So if a staker provides more tokens, no, there's no difference. And then the other thing that I also want to point out is that a collator does not get any more rewards for putting up a higher bond, right? So if the minimum bond is 100,000 Glimmer, if a collator decides to bond 105,000 Glimmer, they don't get any extra benefits for that. And so if they do want to stake some more of their own Glimmer, they should use a separate account, and then they should just delegate to their own collator. Okay, what should we do when a collator goes in the waiting pool? This is a great question. So if your collator goes in the waiting pool, you can choose to stick with that collator. And so, for example, the collator set is scheduled to increase in about 2 weeks from now. And it's set to increase up to 64, I believe. So you could stick with that collator in the waiting pool, and then know that that collator will probably get back in to the active pool once the set increases. The other option is you can, I suppose, move to a different one. But there are some reasons why you might want to stay with a collator in the waiting pool. Maybe you want to support that particular one. But if you immediately want to earn rewards, you'd want to switch to another one. Is there a plan to bring on more collators to ensure that those with a small amount of Glimmer? Yes, there is a plan to increase the number of collators, and this should naturally bring down the minimum bond per collator, over time. And again, this number gradually increases over time. So I think the goal is to eventually, over the long term, to get to a number of something like 100 collators. Okay, so let's move on to the demo. So I'm here in Moonbeam Network apps, and as you can see, this is Moonbase Alpha. The reason I'm in Moonbase Alpha is because I wanted to showcase a lot of different steps, and I would have had to have a whole lot of Moonriver that I don't have, or a whole lot of Glimmer here. So again, we're in Moonbase Alpha, and let's see. Okay, so I have a bunch of delegations here. And what I wanted to showcase first is that you can only stake what is in your free balance. So here we can see I have 42 dev in my free balance. If you are a crowd loan participant for Glimmer or Moonriver, you you should see something here that says like pending crowd loan rewards. Anything that can be claimed. So if you have, one Moonriver that can be claimed, you can claim that right away, and then you can stake that. But if it's something that hasn't vested yet, you cannot stake anything that hasn't vested yet. Another thing to keep in mind for right now, as the design of the staking palette is set up, if something is locked in democracy, or something is used in, like, let's say you have tokens in an LP pool or something, right? You can't also stake that in the native protocol here. So you need to, again, only stake things that are in your free balance. Let's talk here about how we would select a collator. So if we go here to click on select a collator, there's a ton of pure stake collators here because we are increasing the set to 100 in Moonbase Alpha and running some tests. So this is why you see so many pure stake ones. But let's talk about kind of what we see here. So first you have the collator name, and this is the identity that they've associated with their address. And if you copy here, you can copy the address to the clipboard. You can look this up in Subscan. But most of the collators have identities associated with their addresses, so it's easier to see who they are. And typically they'll have similar names across the different networks, right? So you can see Glimmer, you can see on Moonriver, and hopefully the names are similar. So the self-bonded amount, that's how much the collator has to put up to become a collator candidate. Now on Moonbeam, you'll see some that have a self-bonded amount of 100,000 Glimmer, and you'll see others that have a self-bonded amount of 10,000 Glimmer. That's because there was a kind of a pilot program for long-time collators who have participated in tests on Moonbase Alpha and also on Moonriver, and so they were running tests, and they kind of passed these tests and kind of are very active and engaged in the community. And so they were onboarded with a lower amount of Glimmer that was required before the full launch of the Moonbeam network. Let's look at this category here, which is effective bonded amount. So this is a new word change. You may have seen a different actually name there if you've been staking in the early days of Moonriver, and it used to show the total amount bonded. Just consider all of the delegations to that node, including ones that might not be earning rewards. So again, only the top 300 earn rewards. So that previous number was just adding up all of them. Now we're only looking at the sum of the top 300 delegators. So this is a more accurate number, right, when we're kind of looking at what is the total effective stake for a collator. We also have the delegation, the total number of delegations, right? And then we also have a minimum bond. This is the number that I was talking about before. So here on Moonbase Alpha, you can see that we have tons of delegations, and we have a minimum bond here for some of these pure stake collators that is only 5, and we also have one that's 5.01. Now these numbers will range more drastically on Moonriver and Moonbeam, so it won't be this close, but you can understand. You can get a sense, and I'll show actually in the other networks, so you can get a sense of what those look like. But we also see blocks produced last round. Now in Moonriver and Moonbeam, all the collators are running top shelf, top of the line hardware, typically an AMD or an Intel that is kind of the best of the best. And so the way the staking palette works is that it pseudo-randomly chooses a collator to produce a block. It also chooses a backup collator to produce a block in case something happens in that brief period of time where somebody's picked and it's like, okay, where's your block? And if they don't have it, if the internet connection drops or something, there is a backup collator. But generally speaking, in Moonriver and Moonbeam, the blocks that you'll see for each collator, that number is going to vary randomly. And over time, the average number of blocks that each collator produces should be relatively even. Let's touch on optimizing your staking, and how do you choose the right collator. Now you'll notice this list is sorted from. Let's actually take a look. I want to switch to Moonbeam for a second, just because the numbers that we'll see are a bit more realistic, and then we can switch back. How are we doing on time? We're about halfway through. I think we're right on pace. So I'm going to click on Manage Delegations. Then I'm going to click on Select Collator. Okay, so here you can see the minimum bond amount varies quite a bit more here. Now, when you first open this page, you'll see that the collators are sorted by effective bonded amount from smallest to largest. So this is intentional. And if you want to optimize your rewards, you want to be on a collator that has a lower total amount bonded. Now, you need to be aware, however, that the collator with the lowest total amount bonded is also the most at risk to be bumped out of the pool by somebody who amasses, by a collator that amasses more stake. So in Moonbeam, we do notice that the active pool has kind of been shifting a lot more than Moonriver, so it's something to be aware of. If you were to, kind of naively pick, let's say you picked the this one, you picked the collator with the highest effective bonded amount, you would earn a smaller amount of rewards, and the reason for that is that your delegation amount would represent a smaller proportion, right, of that collator's total effective bonded amount than if you went and you chose somebody with a lower total effective amount. Okay, another thing that I want to consider is you might consider spreading your delegation out among a couple different collators. So this can increase your rewards and also reduce your risk. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you choose you choose like 4 different collators, and this is again assuming that you meet the minimum bond for each collator, and one of them moves to the waiting pool, one of them gets bumped out. Not a huge deal, right? For you have a couple different collators, and it also smooths out a couple things by not putting all of your delegation into one giant delegation. If you remove that from a collator, that could shift them around. It could potentially remove them from the active pool if you're like a whale. So it is a good strategy to kind of spread your delegation amount if you're bonding with a very, very large amount. So, and we see these minimum bond amounts, right? There's some collators here that have a minimum bond amount of only 50 Glimmer, right? So that's great to see. As staking becomes more popular, right, we'll see that these Glimmer minimums might increase, but there's still the chance, to be able to bond with the protocol minimum amount, which is good to see. I'm going to switch back to Moonbase Alpha because I want to demonstrate exactly like you saw a couple of the collator names in red. I want to show exactly why that happens and what we can kind of do to fix that. So I'm going to click on Manage Delegations here. And I've set these all up before. So I guess first, let's just talk about modifying a delegation, right? So you're probably familiar with how to delegate to a collator, but if you're not, right, it's just as simple as selecting a collator here. And if I were to pick this, I would say I want to delegate. We saw for this one the minimum was 5, so you can choose 5. You just press delegate. You confirm the transaction in MetaMask, and that's that. If you wanted to, if you wanted to decrease your bond, that's a two-step process. Same thing as revoking your bond, which is also a two-step process. So to revoke a bond, you would press X, and you would confirm the transaction in MetaMask. Whereas if you wanted to just reduce it, you would press the -1, and then you would specify the amount that you want to unbond. So if you wanted to reduce this by half a dev, you can click that, and maybe it might have a stale delegation here, so maybe this was not up to date. But again, it's a two-step process. So that starts by saying, if I were to press the minus button or the X button, that's scheduling this request, and then executing it is when you actually see this check mark here. So Frank is my collator in Moonbase Alpha, so I have a pending decrease request there. If I want to confirm it, I'll just press this check mark. And I think this is because I'm on the wrong account, actually. I think that's why it's getting an error. Can you see my MetaMask? Oh, no, you can't. Oh, that's okay. Okay, so let's talk about why we see a delegator here in red. So there are two reasons why that might be the case. One is that the candidate is in the waiting pool. So this one here, it looked like that was in the waiting pool. Let's just go ahead and check. Yes, we can see that collator candidate is in the waiting pool. So that's in red to draw attention to your stake and kind of say, hey, you know, look and kind of see what's going on. Okay, the second case is that the collator might be in the active pool, but your delegation amount might not be enough to meet that minimum delegation amount per collator. So in this case, let's go ahead and click here, and let's go to the active pool. And we have our delegator highlighted here. So we have our collator candidate highlighted here, and we can see that the minimum is 5.01. And since I was only bonding 5, we can see that I won't be earning rewards. So how do I fix that? I can just press bond funds, and I can increase my delegation amount. So we mentioned the exit delay period, right? 7 days in Moonbeam. It's about 2 days in Moonriver. There's a really important thing that was a change that was made in the last 2 months to the staking palette. It's really important that you understand this change. So only the delegator can schedule a request to either reduce or revoke their delegation. However, once the exit delay period has passed, anyone can execute that request. That's kind of like, whoa, anybody can execute those requests. Yes. The reason for that is this is to discourage people from queuing up a bunch of revoke or decrease requests that they don't intend to execute, or maybe that they intend to execute at some later date and time. And in order to ensure the stability of the collator set and stability of block production, right, this system is by design set up so that you schedule your request to leave, and then anybody can execute that after the exit delay period has passed. Now, you should always expect that somebody will execute your request. You shouldn't expect that the 7 days will go by in Moonbeam, and then you'll be kind of happily waiting around, and then you'll execute it at your convenience. More than likely, somebody will execute that for you. In fact, they actually have an incentive to execute it for you, because if they're a fellow delegator and then you leave, well, now they're going to be earning a slightly higher amount of rewards. You can do this through Polkadot.js apps, and I've done it to help people who've maybe had been unsure how to execute their stake. I say, okay, tell me your address, and I can go ahead and execute that for you. But there's simple tools that are being developed so that people don't have to go through Polkadot JS apps, and instead can just look at what are the current delegations that are ready to be executed, and then somebody can just click it with a button and just pay a tiny gas fee. So again, always expect that if you schedule a request to decrease or revoke, expect that somebody else is going to execute that for you. So before the 7 days have passed, right, in Moonbeam, or before the 2 days have passed in Moonriver, if you're still waiting, so all these here are executable. So the exit delay period is passed, but you can cancel that request if you'd like, and then you'll stay. So we hovered over the check mark. So I think I covered. I had a couple kind of like questions that I kind of want to cover, and that was for what reason would you want to bond to a collator that's in the waiting pool? There's a couple reasons why you might want to do that. You might want to support a collator in a bid to make it into the active pool. And typically this makes the most sense before a scheduled increase in the size of the active pool. And those occasional increases in the collator set size, those are enacted through governance. And so if you know that one is coming, then you might want to say, well, I want to support this collator. I'm going to go ahead and bond to them. While they're in the waiting pool, you won't earn any rewards. But once they move, if they move to the active pool, then you would start earning rewards there. Also important to keep in mind, the exit delay period is the same, regardless of whether a collator is in the active set or the waiting set. So if you bond to a collator in the waiting pool, just keep that in mind. Okay, I want to take a look at the Web3 Go and other tools in terms of how do I track my delegation, how do I get email alerts, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to open up Web3 Go here. This is a tool which shows tons of information about staking. Right now, this is showing all of the collators in Moonbeam, and it's showing a lot of helpful information. It's also showing some historical rewards, which is kind of a feature that's been requested and something that that could be useful for you. So I've chosen a random delegator's address. I don't know who this is. No idea at all. But what I wanted to do was kind of show you how you could look up your stake here. I may need to refresh this page because it looks like it's not quite loading. Okay, we can come back to Web3 Go if this page is not loading right at the moment. We can take a look at the DApp looker. Let's see if the Moonriver page loads. Okay, we'll come back to that. So DApp looker is another tool. This is lots of information here, lots of ways that you can sort through this dashboard. And you can filter by specific collator address. So here, they have their address, and they also have typically an identity associated, but it can be helpful to kind of sort by various different, you might want to sort by lowest delegation amount. In fact, this is nomination. We should ask them to update that because nomination is our old vocabulary. We're now calling everything delegations and delegators. You can also see the highest nomination delegation stake amount. So a lot of helpful information here. This is all dynamically being calculated. So these numbers will change from day to day. And this is generally a resource where we like to point people to. Okay, some helpful information here for you to see as well. You can see the total number of collators is 53 currently in Moonbeam, and we can see a bunch of other things. We can see the current round. We can see kind of like daily information. We can see the commission and that sort. Another thing we can check on is the, let's see if Web3 Go is loaded. Okay, good, it's back. Let's refresh the Moonbeam page. So I've got my random address, and I'd like to look for that on my stake. So I'm just gonna paste the address here. Okay, so you don't need to connect your wallet. You can just search for a random address, and you can see the collator that this person is delegated to. That's the pure stake collator in this case. You can see the rank of that collator. So here there's just a green star here to kind of let you know that this is one of the top collators. What that's just saying is that you're not at risk of the collator going to the active pool unless there are some really dramatic shifts taking place. It doesn't mean that it's like the collator to bond to with the highest rewards or anything like that. All it's saying is that it's kind of like a safe choice. Okay, self stake 100,000 Glimmer. We can see the total stake, the total nominator stake. We can also see that the total stake that this person has, and we can see their rank. So they're at 251 out of 300, and you can also see what the ratio here I think is 0.02%. So that would be what does their delegation represent out of the total amount delegated. So you can also look at rewards history as well. I believe for this particular delegator, we can see the total amount bonded. We can also see a history of rewards. So that could be useful. I'm going to go back for just a second, and I'm going to demonstrate connecting my wallet. And you can't see the MetaMask pop up, but that's okay. All I was doing is connecting it to this page. And you can see here that there's a little alert bell, a little green alert bell. MetaMask is prompting me to switch networks. So just press this little green alert bell, and you'll see your wallet address. You'll also see an auto notify configuration. If you turn this on, you can specify an address, an email address to receive notifications, and then you'll receive notifications for two things. One is, let's say your collator is ranked like 52 or 53, so it's close to the bottom. You will get an alert for that. And the other thing is, let's say you're the 300th delegator, you also would get an alert to let you know that you're at risk. So I won't dive through all of this, but there are some pretty interesting things that you can do here. You can run some kind of simulations. You can look at the data. You can say like, okay, what do I have? 100 Glimmer, and what happens when I choose this specific collator, right? Something interesting to keep in mind. We can see here this update in real time. So if I have 100 Glimmer, I'm at ranks 233. So that's pretty good. I would feel fine at rank 233. I think I could stay there for a while without too much to be concerned about. But if this were to be smaller, if you were to stake 72 Glimmer, okay, now you're 283. Like you might be in kind of that spot where you might get bumped out. Okay, so another thing I'd like to show you is I'd love to show you the collator tools. And the Moonbeam team has built some, these are just command line tools that are meant to be kind of like helpful for delegators or for collators. And these are, just meant to be kind of like weekend tools, have fun, take a look at it, and that would be something where I just need to switch my screen sharing for. So I guess I need to stop, and let me try sharing my terminal. It's freezing up a little bit. Okay, it loaded, thankfully. If you don't mind, just can you chat and just say that you can still hear me? I think everybody still can, but if you can't, just shout. Crowdcast is a pretty powerful program. Maybe I need a more powerful laptop. Okay, thanks, Simon. Appreciate it. So here on this, we have, I'm going to run this again, but Kathy can put the link in at the end, or I'll put it in at the end. But I'm running on a Mac, so the command I'm running is just, it looks like this, npx ts node, And then the exact file name is list collatorcandidates.ts. And you're going to specify, you need one parameter, you're going to specify a network, either Moonbeam, Moonriver, Moonbase Alpha. So let's go ahead and run this for Moonbeam. And I'm going to expand this window a bit. It does take like a minute, 30 seconds. It has to fetch a lot of data, a lot of different RPC requests and things that need to be done. Okay, so we can see here so this is Moonbeam, and there's lots going on here. So let's break this down, right? We have the ID, we have the identity of the collator, we have the total number of delegators and delegations. Then we have some interesting stuff on the right. We have the total amount of tokens that are revocable, and then we have that means something would be revocable, kind of like right now. And then we also have something, what's revocable in 1 day, what's revocable in 2 days, 3 days. So this is somebody has scheduled a request to reduce or completely revoke their delegation. And if they get to day 6 and they decide, hey, I don't actually want to revoke my delegation, then this number would drop off. But this is a very interesting tool to kind of monitor the collator pool and also track kind of lots of different details. So let's go over some of these numbers, right? If something is in yellow, that's just to show that there are a lot of delegators who are not receiving rewards, right? So if this is 379, there's 79 delegators who are bonded to this collator who are currently not receiving any rewards. And if it's in red, that means that, again, we have a lot of delegators who are not receiving anything. So 151 people for here would not be receiving any rewards. And also looking at amounts that are revocable, we have the same kind of color coordination here. So if you see an amount that is pretty large, like 10,000 or so, that's an amount. Maybe that could have a substantial shift, right? And let's also look at this. So all the nodes here, these are in the active pool. The collators in red are currently in the waiting pool. But you can see kind of the delta between what it takes to be in the active pool and the waiting pool. So it's a delta right now of about 30,000 Glimmer. And once the collator set increases by, I don't want to say the exact number because I think earlier I mentioned the size of the Moonriver collator set instead of the Glimmer collator set. But the Glimmer collator set is 53, I believe, right now. So let's say it increases by 2, right? And it's going to increase by more than that, but let's just say it would increase by 2. Then the top 2 collators in the waiting pool would be, bumped into the active pool. But again, this tool is really helpful. And if we can also run it for Moonriver, and we're getting down to almost 5 minutes remaining, so I may kind of stop here. And then I may take another look at questions. Okay, so this is Moonriver. So we can see all the data here. And there's a lot of data to sift through. But this is a very, very cool tool, especially if you're keeping an eye on a round change as a collator, or if you're keeping an eye on a round change in terms of like picking the best collator. So getting back to questions, there's one here, I think. Let's see. Oh, Simon's done a great job at already answering some of these questions. Oh, Simon, well done. There's is there a minimum bond for Moonriver? Yes, 5 is the protocol minimum. It could be higher for a specific collator. What is the difference between unbond funds 100% and revoke delegation? Okay, so great question. So So unbonding, let's talk. First, you have like reducing a delegation. So reducing would mean, let's say you have 100 glimmer staked and you want to go to 50 glimmer. You can do that by reducing. What you can't do is you can't go from 100 glimmer down to like 40 glimmer because that's below the protocol minimum. So in that case, you'd want to revoke delegation, excuse me, in order to get access to all of your funds. There is an extrinsic on Polkadot.js apps, which is not part of the UI for apps.moonbeam.network. But there is an extrinsic that you can submit that will revoke all of your delegations altogether. So if you had your funds spread out, across like 20 different collators and you didn't want to submit transactions for each one, you can actually submit an extrinsic to revoke all of those. Okay, if a collator drops offline and you stop receiving rewards, do you have to wait until the unbonding period before selecting a different collator in the active set? Great question, Lewis. Yes, you do need to wait for the exit delay period before you select a different one. Now, I just want to mention kind of like a look ahead, and that's that this is an area of active research and development. There's a lot of considerations and crypto economic considerations and technical considerations that go into the design of the staking palette. But yes, we do want to have a way for people to switch collators, but it has to be done in a way that's safe, and it has to be done in a way that ensures the collator set stability and block production stability. So if you're uncertain, if a collator is maybe like at the position 53 out of 53, and you're not sure they might be in the waiting pool, you could schedule a request to revoke, and then let's say a couple of days go by and they're still solidly in the active pool, you have nothing to worry about. Then you can just cancel that, and there's no like penalty or anything like that. You just want to keep track. If you initiated a request to revoke and then you forgot about it and you check your stake a month later, somebody will have executed that, and then you won't have been earning rewards for a little while. Okay, I think those are all the questions that have been submitted. If there is anything else, let me see. The website. Okay, cool. The website that I was showing was the Web3 Go. Thank you, Francisco. And yeah, we'll post some more links. But I think that's everything that I wanted to cover today. Thank you so much for all of your questions. There have been some really excellent questions, and I hope this was a great opportunity for you to see kind of how staking works, and also how you can pick a collator and maybe look at some tools which can help you kind of analyze staking more effectively. Can you rewatch this video somewhere? Yes, it will be here on Crowdcast, so we will share a link to that. So you can definitely rewatch it. You could probably rewatch it with the exact same link that you're on right now. Maybe it takes 20 minutes after or something for it to be available. Thank you so much. It's great to see everyone here. And thank you so much for joining. And I'll see you in the next one.